Welcome everyone. This is our first ever Education on Air conference, and today educators are hosting 46 Hangouts on Air, leading discussions on a number of topics in education technology. Thank you to the presenters for giving their time, and thank you to all of us for watching. All of our presenters have early access to Hangouts on Air, which is a technology that allows you to broadcast and record Hangouts. So to watch any of these sessions today, simply go to the presenters Google Plus page at the appointed time. And you can find a list of all the sessions and links to the presenters Google Plus page at our conference website, which is sites.google.com/site/EduOnAir/. And I'll repeat that one more time. It's sites.google.com/site/EduOnAir/. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kevin Brookhouser. He's a Google certified teacher and Apps for EDU certified teacher. He teaches high school English at York School in Monterey, California, and he provides technology training and professional development to educators all around the country. So with that, I will let Kevin take it away.
Thanks, Courtney. So yeah, my name's Kevin Brookhouser. I'm a humanities teacher teaching English at York School here in Monterey, California. Thank you all for checking this out. Joining us, we have some other English teachers and some of them Google teachers as well. So today we're going to talk about Google Docs for writing instructors. And I want to go over some topics on how you can use Google Docs to streamline your writing process. So I'm going to share my screen here and show you a presentation I have for this. So you should see this in a second. Okay, can you guys see this? Okay, the first thing, if I'll put up this link later, but if you want to see some documentation of that I've put together, some links provided, you can just go to this URL, goo.gl/2rxfa. That's case sensitive, so the RX and A are capitalized. There's also a QR code if you want to take a photo of that with your phone. So before I move on, I just want to talk about the agenda, what I'm looking to cover today. We're going to go over templates in Google Docs and templates for providing a writing framework for your students. We're going to talk about shared collections, which are slowly being changed to the names now of shared folders for having your students submit their writing to you. Keyboard shortcuts, which are going to allow you to comment on your student documents very quickly. And then we'll talk about using Google Forms to create rubrics for your student writing. So the first thing I want to talk about is templates. Now, templates you may be familiar with in other word processing programs. They're just documents that you can create that you would build off of. So the way to access templates, there are all kinds of templates available, excuse me, available for you to use, and the way to do that is just go to your Docs page and you just click Create and From Template. And I want to show you, this is my screen, and so if I just go to Create From Template, it'll load up a bunch of different templates available for you to use. I want to share with you a template that I've created that you may be able to use with your students, and it's called the Essay Machine. So if you just go into the search window and type in the Essay Machine, you will see a template come up that I created, and you can just click Use this template. And what this is a document that I give to my students that helps them create a framework for their essays. So it's just a table, and on the left column are the requirements that I'm looking for. This is a basic 5-paragraph essay, and I have a place for them to type in their title. And so all the instructions are on the left, and then they type in on the right. And anytime you open a template, it creates a copy of that document. So now any students, or if you click on that, you will now have your own copy, and you can change the name of that document just by clicking on the title up here, and it'll allow you to change the name. So at the top I have a title, and I have specific criteria for how my titles should be written. Especially, this is particularly for a literary analysis. And then I have specific ways that I'd like them to compose their introduction with a hook sentence and then focusing sentences, and this guides them through the writing process. And then I have them end their introduction with a thesis statement. So this is a standard 5-paragraph essay that you probably are familiar with. And then they begin to begin their body sentences, paragraphs with topic sentences, background information for explaining their topic, and then I ask them to supply textual evidence. I know that English teachers are always saying textual evidence, textual evidence. Now they can't get through that process without actually providing that textual evidence, and then they conclude the paragraph. And in this template, there's 3 body paragraphs, and they fill in the same things, and then the criteria for the conclusion. So I found that my students really like this, that this takes a lot of the mystery out of writing, having access to this template. And you can customize this template any way you want. If you wanted to download it and then save it for yourself and then publish it for your students. So that's the essay machine. You guys are welcome to use that. Now, any document that you create in Google Docs can be submitted to the template gallery. So what you want to do is go to your home page or your documents page and check the box of the document that you want to turn into a template, and then in the More options you can click Submit to Template Gallery, and that will create templates, and then you can share those templates with all of your students. So one thing that's cool, if you use Google Apps for EDU, you can restrict all of your templates just to be within your school or district's domain, or you can submit them publicly.
Really quick, I'm going to interject. For those of you participating on the Hangout, if you could just mute your mic if you're not talking when you type, it switches over to you. Thank you.
Great. Any thoughts from our panel here about templates? Anyone want to? Okay, I will move forward with, so that's templates could be really useful. One idea I had for creating a template next is to actually create a document that is written in the MLA formula so that the headings are correct and all the parenthetical notations are correct and the works cited is correct, and then students can use that as a guide for them as they're going through the formatting process. Obviously, they're not going to submit a final formal literary analysis in this template, but the essay machine, but they can use this copy for submitting and finally formatting their paper in MLA. And since I'm talking about MLA, it's worth noting that Google Docs can now be formatted completely in the MLA format with the proper page numbering and all that. So it was an issue before, but now students can submit perfectly MLA documents. So,
Kevin.
Yes.
Could you explain what you mean by that? They can submit perfect MLA documents. Are there help options for that, or what do you mean by that?
Well, there was a time when the Modern Language Association requires, for example, all pages every page to have a page number on it with the last name and then the page number in the top right corner.
Right.
And that sort of pagination wasn't possible in the past, but now it is, and it's just in the page number features. So those are now available. If you go to Insert on any document under Insert, and then scroll down to Page Number, and then at the top of the page, you'll see in the gray box the page number, and then they can write their last name, and then that shows up on every page in the document, just as the MLA requires.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so then we're moving on to collections. So I now have all of my students, I don't have my students turn in paper anymore. All of my students turn in all of their work with Google Docs using collections. which is now being called folder, which happened over the past week. So when we talk about collections and folders, if you're used to working with other word processors or other file systems, you're familiar with the concept of a folder. So a folder is where you can put documents. I liked that Google used to call them collections because the folder metaphor doesn't quite work, because when you take a document and you put it in a folder, then you can't put it in another folder because it's sitting in a folder. What collections allow you to do in Google Docs is you can put any document in as many folders as you want, and that's a way that you can organize everything. So I have my students submit their work in a folder. In order to do that, you just you go to your Docs page and you go to that orange Create button, and there's a you can click Collection, or if you're using Google Drive, it's called Folder. And that will create a folder that in your Docs list, it'll also show up on the left menu bar. Now the next thing you want to do is share that folder. Now a folder can be shared just as any document can, which is one of our favorite features about Google Docs, is the sharing and collaboration feature. So if you just if you right-click it, or if you check it in your box and you click this button Share, that's the Share button, then it'll bring up this window that allows you to change the sharing settings. And so what I do is give my students access, all of my students access to that folder that I create for my students. So you could name the folder like I did here, 2012-2003 writing assignments. And then right here in this window, you can type in the credentials of your students. Now, some people create an entire group with all their students in there, so if you share this document with that group, they will have access to that folder.
Really quick, Kevin, can you repeat the website name where the slides are being held?
Sure. So that's right here. goo.gl/2 capital R capital X lowercase f capital A.
Thank you.
And that takes you to a document that has a bunch of different links, including the link to this slideshow.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So we're back at the sharing settings. This is what it looks like when you click to share either a document or a folder or a collection. And I want to call your attention to this little known feature down at the bottom of this. And it's where it says editors will be allowed to add people and change the permissions of this folder. And you can change that, and it will bring up this dialog box that will allow you to set whether editors or your students will be allowed to add people or change the permissions, or if you check this radio button, then only you will be able to add people to that folder. So that's a little added bit of security that few people know about. So you'll notice that once you have shared your collection, the folder icon will have a little person in there, and that's just a cue to let you know that that folder is being shared, and then over here you'll see in your docs list that it's also shared. So it's good to know. Now, anytime you put a document in that folder, it will be shared with everyone who has access to that folder. So even if a document itself is private, it becomes shared as soon as it's put into a shared folder. So let me show you a shared folder that I've created for my students. This is a screenshot of a folder. So this is English 3, 2011, 2012. And this is the shared folder. I've changed the folder color to blue. I'll show you how to do that in a second. And then underneath are subfolders with all of the assignments that, or many of the assignments that I have given, and then students submit. They just drag their documents after they've created them, or when they've created the document itself, into the folder of that given assignment. So let me show you a trick that I've done is I have a very rigid naming convention that I give my students when they create a document. So here's an assignment, a civil disobedience report. I've had all my students create a document, and I have them label it, name it, not the title of the essay, but the assignment with their name built into it. So what I require that they do is they name their document section number, underscore, last name, underscore, and then the title of the assignment, not the title of the essay itself. And what that allows me to do is sort all of my submitted papers first by section number and then by last name, so I can check off to see that all of my students have turned their work in, and it's after a couple days my students have learned that I'm really rigid about that naming convention, but it saves me a lot of work later.
Kevin, could I ask something quick?
Sure.
Now, some teachers I've heard have students make a folder with all their work in it and then share it with a teacher. Could you talk about what you think of that philosophy? I know streamlining is always something that we're all interested in. And what have you found?
Yeah, I could see that working. What I like about creating a folder and having a folder by assignment rather than by student is because I check to see that they're done, and I grade my assignments not by student, but I grade them by assignment. Does that make sense? And so then it keeps them organized for me. Now here's a caveat. Here's something that I've kind of had to come to terms with and embrace is using this model, my students actually have access to each other's documents.
Oh, right.
And so they can read each other's writing. I think that this is a really great thing. So I really believe that my students write better when they know that their peers are going to have access to their documents. And I will show you how I comment on the documents just like we all used to with red pens in the margins. And other students can see those comments. And again, I embrace that. I think that the comments that I place on one student's essay is probably applicable to my other students' essays as well. And I've just told them ahead of time that that's going to be the case. Now, as for the grade of the essay, that comes later, and that is not shared with all students. Only the individuals actually see what grade they get and final comments. But inline comments, everyone sees. So that's something that if you want to adopt this model, you'll have to wrap your brain around.
Kevin, we have a comment from someone who's watching on the stream, and I'll just read it and share. So they said, the last session that I made an important distinction between moving a document and adding a document to a new folder. So just dragging a document from one location actually moves it out of one folder and into another. But I think that by using Control, click, and then dragging it, you can add it to more than one folder, which can be useful. So that was from Dave, who just wanted to add that tip.
Awesome. That's a great tip. Yeah, I've found that the dragging of the documents can, they don't work as consistently, and it's harder to be precise. So if you use the check feature, let me go back to my screen, and I'll show you what I mean by this. That's a great tip, by the way. If this is my docs list, and if you just check any of these boxes, and then you can organize, and you can identify specifically which documents you want to be in which folder. So yeah, thanks for that comment. That's awesome. Okay, so moving on, another way to organize your folders is by color. This is a great tip that I just learned recently. You can check any folder and then right-click it, and then you can change the color. So that'll help you, if you organize your life that way, if it helps you to keep track of things, then you can color code any folder. Any other comments or questions about collections and folders?
I had a quick question, Kevin. In this, model where kids can see each other's work, so when they put a folder or put a document in the folder, clearly they want you to be able to edit it because you're going to have to do that, put your comments and stuff on it. You ever have any issues with students going into other students' documents and doing anything? Is that a concern at all?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that I had to think carefully about before I started doing this. There's two ways to look at this. One is every document has a revision history that's tracked.
Right. Okay.
So if someone comes in and attempts to vandalize a page, not only can you undo those features, but you can see who is actually doing that, and you can have an intervention conversation with that student.
Okay.
If that still does not work for you, you can change the sharing feature of any document so that the documents are read-only or comment-only.
Okay.
So that's a solution to that problem. But I believe in the openness of these and having people be able to edit them and teaching students to respect each other's work. And so I haven't had any problems with that yet, but it's definitely something you want to think about.
I have one more question from the people watching.
Yeah.
So Don asked, thinking particularly for ELA, kids working on a piece of writing individually, but other students and teachers might be providing feedback. She's asked, would kids be doing this in their own Google Docs section and creating a piece of writing and then sharing it with the teacher? Or would the teacher create a site and set up a wiki with each student having their own place to work and then adding it so others can provide feedback?
Well, you can do either. You can do either of those. So let me see if I can wrap my head around that question in particular. So students who are working with several other people, yeah, I like having my students create their own documents and having some ownership of them and then sharing them with me. That's my preference. That's how I do it. But there's many different ways to do it. Any thoughts on our panel here? Nope.
No, I agree. I like that strategy too. I like the ownership of the student, creating the document, sharing the document, learning how to do that. I think that's exactly how I would handle it as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Caitlin. All right, so let's go back to my screen. Next, I'm going to actually talk about commenting on documents and tell a little story. I really got on board with Google Docs a couple of years ago and decided I am going to go completely digital, and all of my students are going to turn in their papers through Google Docs, and I'm going to comment on them. And I went through a stack of papers, and I found that that putting in comments using the comment feature in Google Docs, when multiplied by the dozens and dozens of times, it actually ended up taking more time than writing with red ink. So I went back to the paper model for a while, and then I learned the keyboard shortcuts, and that changed everything. So the traditional way of, let me just go to my documents here. And
Kevin, can I add one thing in?
Please.
One of the things that I think is important is, at least a transformative moment in my own practice, was seeing comments not so much as my red ink on their paper, but a conversation between two writers. And so and I'm sure you'll show this in a minute, but I think one thing that added a whole different dimension to be able to comment asynchronously and continue a conversation without sort of transacting paper back and forth, even beyond sort of the efficiency of the keyboard shortcut.
That's huge, David. We're all about teaching writing as a process. It's not you submit a paper and then get comments and then deal with that grade. That's a great piece of advice. And yeah, what the commenting feature allows students and teachers to do is it creates a comment thread. So I can take any element in the paper and I can just highlight it. And traditionally what I would do before I learned the keyboard shortcuts, I would just go to Insert, Comment, and that would create that comment window. But that little bit of movement going into that menu system took enough time. So here, if you just highlight it and then hit Option Command M, that automatically brings up a comment, and you can type in your comment. And then hit Control Enter, and that submits the comment. And yeah, your students can respond to that comment, and you can actually have a threaded conversation. And then once that's done, you can click Resolve. But that is a super fast way to create, to be involved in that conversation. When English teachers, I know you all have stacks of papers to grade. Every little second counts. So, but that's this is a great way to continue that conversation. All right, so that's the keyboard shortcuts. Again, to review, it's Option Command M on a Mac, or it's Control Alt M to enter in a comment, and then Control Enter to submit that comment. All right, so now we're going to move on to the final topic that I'm going to address here, and that's using forms. I hope you guys have played around with forms. Forms is just an amazing way to collect all different types of data. It allows you to create a form, you can submit it to your students, to your colleagues, and collect data. I'm going to show you one specific way that I use forms. A lot of people think when they think of forms, they think about creating a form for other people to fill out. But you can create forms just for yourself to fill out, and it's a way for you to organize your own data. So I want you to think about that. So for what I do whenever I have a student or a writing assignment, I create a separate form called the rubric. And so here's an Antigone essay that I assigned, and I created a form. And you just go to File, or in Create, and then Form, and it brings up this type of window, and you can title your form, and you can create different types of questions. I always start my question with section number, and it's a multiple choice question, and then student's last name is a short answer, text answer, and then here you'll see I have a thing called code, and I'll explain in a little bit why I have a code feature. Actually, I'll just explain it now. So like I said earlier, this rubric is for myself, and I use it to enter in to record how students do on any given paper, but I also share this form with my students so they know exactly how I'm going to go about evaluating them. So they can see this form, they can grade their own essay if they want, but I create a code, and there's a unique number that I put in here so I know that any submission that has that unique number is something that I submitted, not the student submitted. So that's why I have that code. So in the forms, when I actually get to the rubric part, I create questions, and I use the grid feature. The grid is one of the types of questions that's offered, and it brings up these windows, and it starts with a question title, and each grid has a series of sub-questions in it. So the first is content, and that's just the section of the rubric, the content section. So here I have it 4 columns. They get graded 1 through 4. If it's a perfect on each criteria in the content, they get a 4. So in the row labels, I have paper has a clear purpose and makes a point, uses specific details and examples, omits unimportant details. You can see the different criteria, and you can see what it looks like. This is what the form looks like once it's finished. So I have another section for order, a section for style, a different order, style, a section for editing, the mechanics, spelling, grammar, smooth and easy to read. I'm a stickler for consistent verb tense, so I give them 4 out of 4 if they have consistent verb tense. And then at the bottom are some miscellaneous things that I really care about, and you can put anything you want. Uses a peer-reviewed external source. And then in the bottom, the last, I finally put in the comments, and that's where I write my little narrative to my students about how I think they did on that. And so then I go through all of those, and let me show you one thing that you can do. I'm going to turn off screen sharing for a second. So if you have a tablet computer, you can send this form to yourself, and you can see here this is that same form. I don't know if you can see it, but I actually sit with my papers and on the computer, and then I have this open as I'm grading, and I can just enter in how they do on each given element of the essay. So that makes the experience a little less painless having that. And then as soon as I type in my comments and I hit submit, all of that data gets populated into a spreadsheet, which, let me go back to the screen share. And here is a screenshot from that spreadsheet. all of the numbers are submitted here, are automatically populated. And then I added a column that created the sum of those numbers. So if you'll remember, each item was worth 4 points, and there were 20 different items. So if students get 4 points on every single one of those items, they get a 90% on that essay, or 100%. So this student here got a 90%, and then here are the comments that I've posted. So that was all created, using a formula that added up all of those numbers.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you share these results with parents of your students? Do they have access to their kids' documents that they're working on? Can they participate in this process?
Certainly, yeah. So what I do is once I have all that data, there's a number of ways that you can get this data off the spreadsheet, and there are people who are a lot smarter than me that know how to use JavaScript to create mail merges, and I'm working on that. But right now what I do is I just select the row, and that takes all that data, and then I just paste it into an email to my students. But there are ways that you can create a merge, and one of these days I'm going to get to that. But then you could email that to parents as well. But what I really like about this is it takes a lot of the mystery out of grading for the students as well. They know exactly where they were weaker and where their strengths are in the writing, and then they know where the grades come from. I think some students just think that we invent grades in our heads. So those are the 4 topics that I wanted to cover, and then I just wanted to open it up a little bit to questions and comments, any other ideas that anyone else in the panel has.
I wanted to share just something that kind of dovetails onto saving time grading. So when I was exploring Google Docs, I started going into my tools section and changing my automatic, my automatic preferences. Let me wonder if it's worth screen sharing. Yeah, so I go to Tools, and then I would click my preferences and create automatic substitutions. And so as you're going through and grading a document, so for example, if I'm reading a document and I see a spelling error, or I see a phrase or a sentence that's awkward, usually in pen and paper, I would write, SP, question mark, or AWK, this needs to be reworked. And if you go to your tools, and you can actually set it so that every time you write SP, it will automatically become something else. So, you want me to screen?
That
I can't.
is awesome. I brought it up. I can screen share it with mine. That is a killer tool. So let me bring that up. So I just went to in this document, tools, preferences, and then you could do
empty, yeah.
CS, right?
And then what I would do is make whatever the note's going to be, like put it in brackets so it's really clear you're inserting something into the text.
Okay, so what would you type in the replace window?
So
give me an example.
What does SC stand for you?
Oh, like comma splice.
Okay, so I would put in brackets comma splice, even dash correct, or just comma splice so they know what they did wrong.
That goes in the second window, right?
Right. So you want to put in the first window is what your little abbreviation is going to be, so it knows whenever you type that. Then put the brackets, comma splice.
Okay.
And then go ahead and click that, and then try it in text.
So.
Yes, enter or return.
Or even space does it.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
now,
that's very cool.
The caveat is that it would be awesome if this translated into comments, but it doesn't.
Oh no!
I know. But you can do because it's in brackets, you can insert into the text. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a way to make it a different color. I also have found kind of an unobtrusive way to do it is to just add a footnote and have them appear at the bottom of the page so the kids have to, kind of seek out what's happening. So I do in text, and I've done footnotes. It'd be great if we could get them in the comments as well, but right now that wasn't working for me.
Right.
But I made a whole bunch of them, and they are a huge time saver. So I use my comments to really focus on, analysis and kind of drawing out more of the things that I'm hoping students will develop, whereas I use those quick substitutions as a way to make in text like reminders and notes that things are incorrect that need correcting.
That's a great tip. Now, when you set those preferences, do they carry over into other documents, or are they connected to that given document?
No, I think it's cross-document because I haven't reset them and I've used it on several documents.
Great tip.
We have another question from the stream. Michael was saying, you're talking about rubrics, and he is interested in analytic rubrics that have descriptors for each level of performance as opposed to selecting a number. Have you thought about using that?
Yeah, so say that again.
So his comment says he's talking about rubrics right now, but I want to be clear about the kind I have in mind. I'm interested in analytic rubrics that have descriptors for each level of performance as opposed to selecting a number.
Can I jump?
Okay.
Oh, I can jump on this too.
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, it's easier to do the numbers when you're working with the grid and the examples that were shown already, but what's kind of nice as a teacher is if you want the specific descriptions to go with a number. So if I'm giving someone a 2 and this is what it means, you can create a really detailed rubric where the numbers are assigned with a really specific feedback comment, and then make that viewable document that students always have access to. So let's say you're grading an argument essay or an informative essay and they're like, why did I get a 2? Well, they can always view this document with a really complete rubric, but you don't have to recreate that every time.
So you're talking about creating a separate document that explains specifically with, passive sentences is one of my criteria, and it gets a number from 1 to 4, and so a separate document might say this is what a 3 means. It means that most of your sentences are active, that sort of thing. So it's a separate document that explains what each of those numbers might mean.
Right, totally. So if you have like a mechanical errors, it's like strong editing, few mechanical errors, or mechanical errors are distracting from your content, where it really spells out exactly what the number value means for students, but that's not recreated on every rubric.
So and another thing that you could do, and this may solve your individual or the commenter's individual issue, is create a bunch of questions in a form that are just text-based questions, and they could have a prompt. So if you wanted to be more analytical or have more of a narration on each given item rather than a numerical value, then it could just be an open-ended question, and so you could have mechanics and then a little text box, and you could write about the mechanics of that paper. I do like the applying numbers just for the ease of evaluating and grading, and then I do my narration at the end where I write about the paper in general, and then specifics. If I have a specific issue about a given part of the paper, I'll write a comment in there.
We have 2 other questions. Judy asks, when students do collaborative writing, do you have a recommendation for a procedure so that they're collaborating to a final product effectively?
Well, that's kind of an age-old problem. What Google Docs allows you to do is that students can work on the same document at the same time in real time, so that a student can be working on one paragraph and another student can be working on a different paragraph, and it actually works. The way this sort of thing was done in the past before Google Docs is a student might work on a draft and then email that draft as an attachment to the collaborator, and then so the other student might work on that. Then you got 2 copies of the document, and trying to merge those copies that's really challenging to merge those. That's where Google Docs comes in, where it's one copy. You don't have the version control issues. Now, one question that I get, and I'm sure that some teachers are asking, is how do you make sure that there's some degree of parity in the amount of work that each team member is doing? And I would have you go and I would go to the revision history of the document, and then you can see who worked on what part of it. So I'll show you how to get here. Now, you should see my screen now. So if you just go to File and see Revision History, on the right it shows you earlier versions of each of the entire document. Now this is a copy of the document, so it's not going to show you very much, but it's all color-coded, and you can actually see who made what changes by color. So you can tell what level each student was working on. If the document is all one color, that means that one student is doing all the work. I hope that answers the question somewhat.
Yeah, we have another question from one of our participants. David had a question. Do you want to go ahead and ask, David? No, I will ask it for him then. He said, what are your thoughts for Flubaroo for the self-grading rubric?
Flubaroo is fantastic, and I'd highly recommend that anybody Google that, Flubaroo, F-L-U-B-A-R-O-O, and what that does is it's a plug-in in Google Docs that uses forms, and it automatically grades the essays. It asks for what the correct answers are, and I believe that there is a Flubaroo workshop in these sessions. So that's beyond the scope of this, but it's definitely worth checking out. What it does is you can create quizzes with multiple choice questions or single word answers, short answers, and then the teacher ahead of time enters in what the correct answers are, and then that quiz is graded automatically, and the students receive a email that shows them what they got on that quiz. So check out Flubaroo. It's definitely worth checking out.
Kevin, I have just a comment. I'm thinking about how you can avoid having to email that row of numbers to your students. Are you hearing me?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you, instead of their names on the spreadsheet, could you have a code and then just share the spreadsheet with everyone so they wouldn't see names, but they would know their code? You wouldn't have to do all that emailing?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
And it would be anonymous.
Yeah, that would that could work. My students would probably figure out who's who, because I'm commenting directly on specific elements of the paper. If I were really worried about that, yeah, it might work. It'd be worth trying and see if it works. That's a great idea, and I like the idea of the code.
We have one other question. David asks, Kevin, do you have your students provide peer feedback? And if so, what is the process that you found most effective?
The answer is yes. And when I use this, the shared folders, each folder each assignment. So I have a separate folder in the main folder for each assignment, and all students have access to all documents. And so what I do is I often I create small writing groups or writing workshops where students work together in groups of 2 or 3, and they are required to comment on each other's paper. They already have access to all of the papers, so that's already done. So yeah, I do make it a requirement, and I can track all of that. I can see how many times Billy has commented on Johnny's paper, so you can track all of those things. Yeah, it's
and
great.
so that would be an additional benefit of really having the folder system the way you have it, is they're already so easy to access for the kids in terms of peer editing. I also use Google Forms for peer editing, and it's so much easier to focus kids in on the elements you want them looking for when you've created a really specific form that they can use to really, piece apart somebody else's writing and give them some focused feedback. It's, not like the blind leading the blind anymore.
Yep. And you can use forms beyond presentations. I create a rubric for every or beyond writing. I create a rubric for in-class presentations, speeches, and I can send that form out to all of the students and participants who are watching that presentation, and they can provide feedback as well on the given elements of what I'm looking for in those presentations. Great. Are there any other comments or questions?
I think we're good on the comment stream.
Okay. Well, let me just give a quick plug. Let me share my screen again. And want to tell you all about the Google Apps for Education California Summit. This is July 12th and 13th at the Hyatt Regency in Santa Clara. If you're interested in some great workshops led by other Googlers and Google certified teachers, this is going to be an amazing experience. It's basically you're getting the, through this you will get the experience of the of what Google certified teachers get at the Google Teacher Academy. And to get there, it's at, just the website is ca.gafesummit.com. GAFE stands for Google Apps for Education. So ca.gafesummit.com. And a lot of my friends will be presenting there, and I can guarantee.
Yeah, and I think we're having a couple of those in different places around the country this summer. So if you can't make the California one, definitely check out the Google Apps for Education website.
I have another quick question. Does anyone know if there is a Google Teacher Academy domestically? Is anything coming this summer? There was the one in England.
Yeah, there was recently one in Seattle, and so they change the locations every year, and so the last one was in England. The one that I went to was in England, but they have had them. The last one in the States was in Seattle. So just keep your eye out for the website, and it is an amazing program. I highly recommend anybody, any educators out there applying to be a Google certified teacher.
Great.
And just a note for anybody interested, I know we had people asking about Flubaroo, that there's a grading with Flubaroo and using Google Apps scripts in the classroom at 6 p.m. Eastern Time today. So if you're interested in that, you can check it out.
Awesome.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Kevin, especially for hosting us. Thank you to those of you who participated and everyone who participated in the Hangout stream. If you want to get in touch with Kevin, you have his Google Plus information. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody.